Kendra's not going to be here. She had a death in the family. Okay. All right. I have no idea. Good evening. Seeing a quorum of voting members, I call the February 19th Student Achievement and District Instructional Performance Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Treasurer Wagner, please call the attendance roll. Whenever you're ready. Sorry about that.
Sorry, I was so busy socializing, I couldn't find my form. Okay, Mr. Craig, Mr. Crossett,
Here.
Mr. Lindy, Ms. Mapp, Mrs. Weinberg,
Here.
Vice President Bolton,
Present?
President Moffett.
Here. Thank you. Superintendent Murphy, please introduce our first presentation.
Thank you so kindly. Up first today, we have our Chief Operations Officer, Mr. Chris Burkhardt, who is going to provide us with a facilities update.
Welcome.
Good afternoon.
For you as we move forward to the next slide. So happy to announce that we are launching FMX, and FMX is our facilities rental software that will be kicking off next month, and that will allow a one-stop shop to be able to rent any space within the district, whether it be a cafeteria, whether it's a gymnasium, whether it's a classroom, as well as all the ancillary services that go along with that, will all be done in a website versus what we are doing now is everything is on paper. We are sending emails. We're trying to find out if space is available, emailing back and forth between principals, and then having that be a manual process. Now this will be a one-stop shop in which a user will go and enter their request, automatically be routed to the person who oversees that space to be able to approve or deny it, as well as any ancillary services that are needed. Second, I'm really happy to talk about the Roberts Dental Clinic and Welcome Center. So we are well underway with the construction. This photo was taken last week, and this week we are putting up drywall. So the space will be able to be inhabited sometime at the end of March. So we're really looking forward to getting that space usable for the Roberts Dental Clinic and Welcome Center. Big thanks to Clicky for really, and Darlene for really stepping up and helping us through this process. As we move forward to the Montessori Lab School at the Bramble Nature Campus, we held a meeting last week, phenomenal meeting. We had over 85 families that were there that expressed interest in utilizing that space. And so as we are moving forward with facilities and looking at the putting the Montessori Lab School in the Bramble building, we are continuously updating that space and making sure that we will have a win-win situation for all those involved. As we move to the next great slide, community makeover was announced. The Reds every year do a community makeover. This year projects will be at Frederick Douglass and Dr. Odell Owens. We don't know exactly what those projects will entail right now as we are just starting that process, but it looks like Frederick Douglass will be at least getting a new playground area and really looking at that space behind their building from the old basketball courts and parking to make it more usable, green-friendly space for the community to use. So we're really excited about what that's going to look like over the summer. I believe it's July 24th is the date in which all of our supporters from around the city of Cincinnati will come to those two schools and within 24 hours work some magic and really transform those two schools into some magical spots. So as we move to the next kudos, so our facilities team has really been working diligently on testing new chemicals. We wanted to make sure that we were looking at the board policy that was passed last year in relation to sustainable environments. And so we have ordered new products that are Green Seal certified. Green Seal certified are those products with non-carcinogenic ingredients, non-combustible, have low skin and eye irritation, and respiratory irritation, less respiratory irritation potential. And so we're really, really excited about when we tested those products, making sure that they met our standards, making sure that they were green for the environment. We have ordered those as we go over the next couple of months. We're transitioning our old products out and utilizing our new products. So we will be 100% green with our products for facilities starting in July. So that's a really big lift for the facilities team, and glad that we're making a positive impact on the environment in the process. So as we talk about building cleanliness and those cleaning products, one of the questions that was asked at a previous board meeting was in relation to the custodial square footage coverage and what that might look like if we were to increase that. So currently what I have on the screen is the APA standard space schedule, and the APA is Association of Physical Plant Administrators. What this tells us is per person, per man hour or woman hour, how much space could one person clean in relation to schools and school-related facilities. So if you look at the level, it goes from 1 to 5, 1 being pretty much spotless with 8,500 square feet, all the way up to level 5 being unkept and neglected, 45,600. As we look at CPS, last year we were at about 28,700 per square foot, so that puts us on the tail end of level 3. This year, because we added more school space, so we had some renovations at Hyde Park, Pleasant Ridge, and Walnut, so our square footage became greater, but we also decreased the number of custodians over the summer. We downsized by 15 custodians over the summer, which caused that number to go up from 28.7 to 29.3. So that's our current space. Rob, if you click on the custodians per square footage, so in this we have the table that shows you each school as well as how many positions and how many square feet that is per employee. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, it will give you the per square footage if we were wanting to go to the next level. So we are on the tail end of level 3. In order to get to a solid level 3, it would be about $1.3 million. If we were to go to, which is 23 additional employees. If we were to go to level 2, it would be 162 employees at about $9 million. And if we wanted to get to level 1, it would be 524 employees at $29 million. So I just put this up here to give you some, to level set what that would look like if we were to go from a level 3 to a level 2 or a level 1. I also want to take into consideration, as we're talking about level 3 and where we're at with the 29,300, that does not include facility rental or some of those ancillary things that happen at our campuses. So the APA standards are based on an 8-hour day, but we know that not all of our schools have 8-hour days. We have dances after school, we have athletics, we have community organizations coming to use our buildings. So that 29,300 is really a soft number. It's probably a lot more. However, because we have been tracking our facility usage on paper, we don't have the data. So that's one thing that FMX, as we're coming around full circle to the first slide, that is something that we're really, really excited about, is being able to track all of our expenses and actually what it costs to operate one of our buildings for all the costs, including facility rental and usage amongst the school staff in the building. As we go to the next slide, and this is the final slide, this would not be complete with a 5-year plan estimated costs that I like to share every time I get the chance. Rob, if you click on the slide, you'll see that our cost,
That happens.
so in a minute, you'll see the costs. That we're at $171 million, and I know that the board has seen this many, many times before. But we're at $171 million as of today. That number keeps rising as we are looking at our facilities. For example, as we move forward, we know that we've had a lot of inclement weather. We will have some potholes in some areas of our pavement that need to be replaced and/or fixed and/or repaired. We also have situations in which we will have roofing repairs that need to happen based on the weather, as well as tuck pointing of joints and some of those other things. So as we are looking forward, this 171 is today. We also know that if we are looking at levies for the future, we know that every year we're looking at about somewhere around 8% increase. So by 2027, we're looking at that being around 215 million just for inflation, economies of scale. As we also look at some of the changes the administration is making, i.e. some tariffs and things that are going on, cost of steel is going to increase significantly, as well as a lot of other building supplies. So again, this number is soft. We don't know what it would look like in 3 years, but we're trying to extrapolate. We're also going into this spreadsheet on a monthly basis and trying to update as much as we can in relation to not only the projects, but the cost of the projects as we have more updated information.
Thank you. Any questions from board members? I think some board members need access to the file.
Yes.
Did anyone have any questions? Mr. Crosby? We need some Jeopardy music. I said Jeopardy music and kids were like, what? Not that bad.
We're good? No. Maybe.
Well, I'm sure you'll get some questions later. No worries. I do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Board members, you'll get access. I'm curious, as board members, I know I've got one or two I need to return emails to neighbors and alumni of some of our buildings that have said, hey, the yard looks horrible. We need some help with regard to facilities. Our alumni take great pride in their facilities. And so can you share with me, and I have a few questions, which schools have the greatest facility need? And are those schools fully staffed or are they half-staffed? I think it's interesting that we are having, we're able to kind of quantify cleanliness of the buildings, and that was kind of interesting to me. But I'm also very curious around recruitment and staffing levels, particularly because the community is very interested in that. And I think I have one email around litter and wondering, you know, it said, what has our historical number been? So we're at 28,000 now. What has it been over time? And is there a trend? Like, I don't remember this being a thing 5 years, well, pre-pandemic, 7 years ago or so. I don't remember there being a way to quantify staffing levels regarding the building facilities cleanliness. So just wondering, how did we fare in the past versus how we are now? And is that a direct in relationship to buildings being understaffed, building size capacity? Like a Withrow campus is much larger than an Euler.
Right.
So that's what my question is.
Yeah, lots of questions to unpack there. First, I think we have 9 open custodial positions, so we're almost completely staffed. And that is typical at this time of the year. We have some folks who retire, and so just getting that, having those positions backfilled. In relation to which schools need the most help, so two things there. One is our oldest schools really have a lot of needs right now to make sure that we are taking care of that infrastructure. But I would say a lot of the newest schools that we've built are also coming around to that cycle. So when you build a house, you know that, for the first 10 years or so, you don't have a lot of maintenance. But once you get to year 15 and 20, then that's when the maintenance really starts to deteriorate, because you're replacing roofs, you're replacing boilers, you're replacing heaters, you're replacing hot water tanks, and that's the same with the schools. So we're at the point right now that both of those are converging together at the same time. So our older schools, we've deferred some maintenance on, and that's coming due, as well as those schools that we built. We like to say they're new, but they're, coming up on between 20 and 30 years old now, and we're having to start replacing those normal things that you would normally have to replace. As we look at all of those, from athletic fields to boilers to camera upgrades, if you ask every principal in any district across the US, there's probably not enough cameras in their schools, so that continuously is a situation that we continuously are just adding cameras and upgrading cameras as possible, knowing that there will never be a finish line there. Until we have, the entire campus taken care of. For a lot of those other items, so for example, carpet and painting, we're putting those on a 7-year plan, or an 8-year plan, or a 9-year plan, to be able to, every 8 or 9 years, put those into the budget so that we're swapping those out, to make sure that we're very, very diligent about, not waiting until 5 or 10 years after the life, and making sure ahead of time that we know what we want to do and what that cost is. As with everything else, we can push some of those, but it at least gives us a starting point. I'm glad you brought up litter, because I've seen that a lot lately too, is a lot of litter. The one thing that we have to remember is around all of our school grounds, we have fencing. And most of that's the chain link fence that loves to trap all that litter from around the neighborhood. So for example, I was at Frederick Douglass the other day, and the fence in front of the building had trapped all of the trash from trash day that had blown either out of the trash cans or down the street and ended up in front of the school. So it's a constant issue that we ask our custodians and building engineers to go out twice a day and make sure at the beginning of the day that they're walking and getting all that trash, but also at the end of the day, making sure that that's done as well. Sometimes that is easier said than done, though, as we go around to our schools, but that is our standard, and when we don't see it happening, we make sure we address it.
Thank you. Board Member Weinberg.
Not on. Okay, yes, there's my voice. Had a quick question. You mentioned fencing, and I actually was going to bring that up. In terms of fencing, so over at Westwood, they have the different type, elementary, they have the, I don't even know what fencing you call that, but it's black and it has the long,
Yeah.
columns. How do you all determine, or when do we replace the fencing, and which fencing do they choose? Is it based on elementary versus high school? And I was just kind of curious about that.
Yeah, so looking at fencing, we have to look at why the fencing is there in the first place. So sometimes it's decorative, and sometimes it is because we want to create a barrier between the two. We're really looking right now at if the barrier is there for more aesthetics than it is for anything else. We're really looking at green fencing. And what that means is things like arborvitae and planting those, or shrubbery, planting those in the space that provides more green space, makes it look nicer, and then you don't have as much upkeep on some of that fencing. To your point, some of that is the most economical fencing is the chain link, obviously, which is what we see in a lot of our athletic fields and around the backs of our buildings. In the front of our buildings, we'd go with more of a wrought iron look because we want it to be aesthetically pleasing, which isn't always the case when you're dealing with chain link fencing. At the end of the day, it's both an aesthetics and a cost, as well as maintenance.
And is there any particular code that we have to meet in terms of again, does an elementary school have to have a specific type of fencing in the front versus the back versus high school?
No.
There's no, okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Superintendent Murphy, please introduce our next presentation.
Absolutely. I'm happy to introduce our Chief Information Officer, Mr. Jeremy Gallagher, with an update on our technology.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I'm not going to spend a lot of time reading to you the departmental strategic mission or that. You want to go to the next one? Or talking necessarily about the organizational breakdown of the department, but I did want to include them. I'd be remiss not to because, of course, year over year, one of our biggest questions we get, not just within the department as a district, is who do I contact about what? So, of course, for IT and technology needs, our answer almost always is call the help desk. But secondarily, if there's an escalation need, I always want to take every opportunity to put this information out as to what we do, what our verticals look like, so that everybody has that information of who do you escalate to next. Good. Couple of quick highlights of information that the board has seen updates on previously this year. We wanted to bring back some updates now. Of course, the biggest fantastic work, fairly overwhelming this year, has been the implementation of our first year of Focus, as well as Canvas. Recall that these are the systems that replaced a number of systems across the district, including our student information system, our learning management system, our case management for IEPs, as well as a number of reporting and data systems. So as we went through the implementation, you can see, we've had a lot of training opportunities we provided to our staff across the board, 275 plus since August. So if you lay those out end to end, most of them were front-loaded, in fairness. But if you looked at it end to end, that's basically like 10 training opportunity sessions per week that we've been offering to staff. So we're very happy with that, but we're not done yet. That train has to keep going. In addition, also, of course, we've had guides, videos, office hours, and trying to cover every base we can. In November, we performed our first staff satisfaction survey. We did do a random sample of 999 staff. There's a couple of reasons we chose to do a random sample. One, with respect to survey fatigue. We do have several surveys. We wanted to hesitate on asking all of our staff to do one, but we also wanted to be able to focus on a number that we could look at the responses for one of the most important questions we asked. And that was, why did you rate it the way you rated it? It's nice to know that who likes, who doesn't, but we really wanted to hear on an individual basis, if you rated it less than satisfactory especially, what was missing? What is the feature that's not working the way you want? So as a follow-up, we were able to create essentially a punch list from all of that feedback and work our way through one by one to make sure that we were trying to address every feedback that we were getting, the things that were either not liked, and the things you would just see in a normal new system overall. So you can see we had around a 31% response rate. It was across all of our various stakeholder representative staff groups. And when we do our next survey that actually launched this week, we'll be selecting a new sample. So you can see the overall satisfaction rating for Focus currently was 53% rated as satisfied or better. For Canvas, that's the LMS side, was 56% or better. Now, we're obviously happy that more than half of our staff are on board with us and they're satisfied as a product and better, but of course, that means just under 50% were less than satisfied, and that's not a happy place that we want to be in. So like I said, we took that opportunity to approach each of those feedback items, but then we looked at, okay, take all the individual parts out and just at the categories, what were the top 3 things that we were getting as a reason why they would rate it less than satisfactory. Those kind of came into the 3 categories of too many clicks, too much change at once, and too complicated. So really, if you start root causing all 3 of those, it comes back to the first point, that more time with the system to get comfortable and more training. Those are really the only ways to overcome that, especially as we work into it and you learn that, well, I thought there was too many clicks for that, not really because there were, but because I didn't know the way to do it in the short way. I was doing a long way that may not have been necessary. So that's where we want to continue focusing on our training efforts throughout the year to bring everybody on board, and we'll see what our next survey looks like that's going out right now. Next slide. The second large project, and the board will recall, you've played a big hand in it already this year. On September 23rd is when the board passed our first Cincinnati Public Schools AI policy. And at that time, if you recall, I can't remember exactly who asked the question, but I responded essentially that we were ready to take those next steps as soon as this policy was approved. So kind of to live into some of that of what we've done, what we kicked off immediately thereafter was our AI Intro 4 series. So we started with our early adopters, the tech coordinators, and we did an AI introduction for tech coordinators. You can see the series running across the slide there that we went from tech coordinators to teachers, to principals, to assistant principals, and beginning next month, we'll be launching the Artificial Intelligence and Education Introduction for Families. That'll be where we start providing resources and education to families at various touch points in events that the district has starting next month. You can see some of the information that's contained within that introduction. Of course, we cover like what is generative AI, what does the educational use of AI look like. For staff members, it's a real big part of how do you change the way you work utilizing AI for efficiency. And of course, for our teachers, one of the biggest questions always is, what is cheating with AI? What does that mean? How do they do it? What are we watching for? That kind of topics. In addition to the Introduction 4 series, we've also started a number of committees to help assist in directing the future of that work for a staff usage subcommittee, the instructional usage subcommittee, the family engagement and usage subcommittee, and LSDMC engagement sessions are being held all under the master committee of the implementation committee for AI. One last thing I wanted to call out real quick was that we will also be holding, as you can see on the right side, on March 3rd, our first ever clerical tech conference. So some things that we've heard for a number of years, while our clerical staff always get monthly training for registrations and enrollment and things like that, they're often not included in the tech part of just generally getting information and updates on what's available to them from our systems. So we wanted to respect that feedback and request, and we have launched now, this will be our first annual Clerical Tech Conference, which will focus on a number of things, including AI-specific work for them, or AI-specific use for their work to assist in better efficiency. So I will apologize in advance. Since we posted this originally, there were some questions that came up that led me to believe we might want to have a little bit more of a budget-oriented conversation around this. I do have another slide, but it was not included in what the board has or what was posted. So if we'd like to talk about that, I'm happy to go into it, or if we'd like, I would be more than willing to come back and do it at another time.
I think that was probably my question. I'd send it to Superintendent Murphy. I wanted some information around technology in the budget. It's up to the board members. That was just I wanted to get some information around technology in the budget, but I'm open to board members. If you want to ask questions about what we've seen, that's fine. We can save the budget, technology in the budget. Is it a lot of is it a lot of slides, Jeremy?
It's only one slide, but it's pretty dense material.
I just have a couple questions.
Well, present your slide and then we'll.
Okay. Flip to
Before
it.
he does that, can I ask my questions about this?
Okay, so starting with a little bit of a, oh, I'm sorry.
Can I ask my questions first?
Sure.
Can we go back to slide number 4? So I just was curious, I know that you stated that you all were able to ask the different categories of staff, but is there going to be an opportunity where you're actually asking the parents and families regarding how they are liking Focus, the ability to maneuver it, et cetera?
Absolutely. Great question. I appreciate you asking, because I did forget to mention. We are looking at that in terms of whether we want to do it at the end of this year, following our second survey to staff, or if we want to launch it at the beginning of next school year to follow, little announcement. Over the summer, we will be launching the mobile partner app for Focus. So CPS Focus will be the mobile app version that essentially will give parents much more access. What we see traditionally right now without, an app is there is limited parent use for the purposes and tasks they need, but not necessarily for the one-stop shop we'd like it to be. So we are very excited that we're planning our launch of that app during the summer for next school year. So we've kind of been looking back and forth whether we want to go ahead and start that survey with families this year or wait until after. So we have a little more engagement both from them as well as we have more feedback from the staff in terms of what we can address, because obviously the staff are really the front line that works with our families that are going to have a big influence on what their opinion or their feedback is for the system.
Is there a way to possibly do the engagement at the end and before? And the only reason why I'm saying that is because I've heard from several parents, including myself, it is very hard to maneuver those two sites. And I think getting that feedback will definitely help, as you're releasing out this mobile, and then also for the next year of how to get parents aligned with the new focus in the Canvas. So is there any way to not wait until the beginning of next year, but actually getting that information, collecting it, utilizing it, and preparing and prepping so that when you do make the launch, that it's a little bit easier as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
I also have another question regarding the next slide, slide 5. Will this particular conference, will there be a cost for the employees, and would they get professional development credit?
There will not be a cost. I will have to check with the team to verify if they can get the professional development credit for it or not. Yes, all right. Team on hand. What more can you ask for? So yes, they will then.
All right, thank you so much.
So continue with your
Okay, so a quick recap in terms of where we are from our technology standpoint, and this focuses on the biggest part of our costs around our lease obligations. You've heard that mentioned by the treasurer in terms of our 5-year forecast and some. So what I wanted to recapture was, if you recall last year, during our budget reduction discussions and votes and variety of things, we looked at reducing our overall technology lease obligations for devices by around $3.2 million. So what that practically meant was we went to a 1-to-1 model for 3 to 6th grade in carts in the school. They no longer took them home, but they were still 1-to-1. We are take-home 1-to-1 for 7 through 12. And then kindergarten through 2nd grade second grade is still 1-to-1 in carts in the schools. Kindergarten through 1st is no longer 1-to-1. They're using iPads in a dispersed for the class, typically like a 4 per classroom. So through that model, we reduced a number of costs that got us down that $3.2 million, which leaves our current lease obligation at the $13.37 million per year. That's an annualized lease obligation we currently have. One important thing to note about that is that lease has primarily been funded over the past several years through our ESSER dollars. Now that those dollars are gone, that will be hitting the general fund again this year for the first time in a number of years. So that represents, by itself, with changing nothing, an increase that we would expect to see. Kind of extrapolating out from that, I'm not sure if everyone remembers, but when we talked about this was kind of a stopgap measure in terms of those budget savings. So a device has a finite lifetime. So by reducing our lease obligation, we returned some devices, we had to buy out some devices, we kept devices that we are forcing to have a longer lifespan than we would normally want to have. So there's a time limit on that reduced spending. So this year, we're fairly steady, we're good with the devices we have, we're making it work. Next year, we're gonna need a little duct tape and a lot of goodwill that we can make it one more year with as we are. But following that year, we are gonna be in a situation where we will not be able to maintain even the model we have today, going 1-to-1 from 3 to 6 and the take-home 7 to 12, as the number of devices that are gonna be unsupported, can't function, or do not function, broken, that we can't replace, is going to exceed the number of students we would have to give them to. So that's where we're kind of our prospect for FY27. So just to maintain the current model, we will need to reinvest into our technology and our devices. So the chart you see here collects not just the device lease, but all across all of our leases that we also use through multiple other reductions in the past several years. Our infrastructure, labeled here as switches, our audio video, we stopped doing any refreshes of the audio and visual classroom technology last year and this year, outside of what we could fund through Title I. So that was very limited in terms of the carryover, and at this point, same scenario, we're gonna start running into failures and equipment that's hitting end of life. And we were still in the process of upgrading a lot of the technology from, say, projectors to the display screens that we were still working on currently. Our storage represents just the file storage that we have for the district, and the firewall, which manages our security systems. Those are our total lease fleet and obligations. So you can see, I said we can maintain this year and next year essentially as is. For FY '27, we will need to restore at least the 3.2 million roughly to be able to maintain what we're doing today. So you can see that raises our cost to 17.8 in '27 and '28. And then we have additional, at that point, equipment that's going to be end of life from the other categories. Our switches, our audio visual kicks back in. At that point is our first year where everything is hitting that point where we have to issue either new leases or purchases. So then our total obligation would go up to 9.3 million for FY '29 and FY '30. So as you can see as a total there, over this year plus the next 5, an investment of approximately $101 million needed to maintain the technology as in the model we have right now. I know at the end of our conversations last year, when we went to this model, there were definitely conversations around what if we wanted to step back a little bit and put take-home back in place for grades 3 through 6. So in the second area here, you can see where there's a pretty good breakdown here of the two options we would have if we wanted to pursue that. One option is a one-time purchase, although that's kind of misleading. Technology does have a finite lifespan, so that one-time purchase buys you devices and equipment that lasts 4 years. At the end of that 4 years, you got to buy another set of devices to replace them. So it's a one-time spend for a period of time, but then repeats, right? As opposed to every year. The lease option allows us to annualize that cost out over a longer period of time, over the years that the lifespan of the device itself. So you'll see what we broke down here with essentially both options, looking at if we were to go back to a take-home model for the 4 grades in question. So it's not exactly a scale. This is pretty close. There are some intangibles that kind of move around, so that's why it's not basically just 25%, 25%. But you can see if we were to do just 6th grade, and I would focus on the lease payments just as, honestly, that would probably be my recommendation as to how we would want to proceed. That's what we've done. It's been very successful for us, and going back to that model, I think, makes the most budgetary sense for us. So you're looking at around 680,000. If we were to do 5th and 6th, it's 668, 683 together, and you can see the breakdown per grade. So the total, if we were to do all 4 grades, would be an additional $2.7 million in leasing on top of the chart above that shows the maintaining. So on any given year, if we were to say in FY '27, we wanted to reinstate our take-home for 3 through 6, it would be the 17.8 million plus 2.7 additional $1 million. One side note, those figures do not include the additional tech costs. So when we reduced our total fleet, number of devices, the break fix has been a huge gain. We expected, it's about where we thought the money would be. I don't know if the schools necessarily would have appreciated as much as they have expressed now, how much better it is with the CART model in terms of that. But we were able to reduce the number of field techs and resources we have to support those devices. Because they're not going home, there's a lot less turnaround issues. If we were to reinstate that, you're talking about close to 10,000 devices we would be adding back into our fleet and pool of devices, which of course would require us to reinstate some level of support, not the whole amount that we reduced, which was, we really cut it in half, but probably about 25% of that we would need to come back also, which is around an additional 250,000.
Got you. Thank you. Board members have any questions? Vice President Bolton.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, and I do distinctly remember you saying that you were going to, it was a little bit of a sleeper thing for a couple of years and kind of, not at risk, but, you know, you were giving up some things, but sooner or later, we're going to have to pay the piper. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the long-term look at this. I have gotten a few worries about the take-home and the availability of take-home for our high school students. Can you help me out with that? Is that a problem of maintenance? Is that a problem, or are you aware of it? I mean, tell me what you know. Mine is strictly anecdotal.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would definitely confirm that we get feedback on occasion of some issues. It's not where we had it previously. All of our service levels had to suffer somewhat. Again, with the reduction in resources, especially around the support, the number of devices we have in the pool means that we had to change the way we do business. So before, when we had the devices available, a student basically would walk in, my device is broke, great, thanks, here's you another one, go about your business, we'll take the time to fix this one now. Because of the limited number of devices we have maintained that as much as possible, but we do occasionally run into issues where we simply don't have devices to do the hot swapping that we would like to do. So it delays some of that coming back. There has been a little bit of a service impact there that we expected.
You know, that probably is part of it, or that probably explains it. The reason I think that they're heavily emphasizing this, even if it is anecdotal and it may not be widespread, or it may be widespread, is just because we depend so much more on curricula now that is not hard copy books and what have you. So it's hard for students to do what they need to be able to do, or teachers to assign what they've got to assign. So, but that's a good explanation, and I hope there's a solution somehow in this coming budget or in how you're organized. Thank you.
Any other board member comments, questions, concerns? Thanks. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Vice President Bolton, please introduce our last presentation.
I think that the treasurer has a sharing, and you have in front of you the final draft of what she's going to be talking about as a poll that is now ready to be distributed tonight at the district-wide LSDMC. And we'll start with the treasurer's presentation.
Good
Madam Treasurer.
afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Just a really quick update. So just to remind you of our timeline. Thank you.
New driver takes a second, sorry.
That's right. So we're about halfway through our process in terms of the traditional process where we start with student projections in November and then finalize a budget in June. Three things to consider. The growth plan was a change to this year. Two, we're still solidifying what the budget priorities are going to be. And three, the governor just dropped their budget bill, and we're in the process of analyzing. I will give you an update on Monday night on the concerns from the urban treasurers, but that may or may not have impact as we move forward. We won't know what the final bill is going to be probably till the middle of late June, once it gets through all the committees and gets voted on. So central office has not started yet. We're waiting for more direction on what to tell them about where to invest the money before we let them begin. Next slide. But this is where we are as of February 18th. So our budget target is still based off the November forecast. We will be updating in May, so that target may change some. And I just combined some lines for the simplicity of this slide. This is nothing you haven't seen already. What I did update was the school budget. We updated this average salaries for fiscal year 26 to use in the budgets. Remember, all the schools are built off of average salaries. We had a higher than normal retirement list, and so the average salaries weren't as much as we expected, so that the school budgets went down just a tiny bit. But right now, as of today, we're sitting at 146 million left to allocate, and that's based on the direction that we move forward. I think that was it. Oh, the survey. So I don't want to claim the survey as mine. I gave feedback onto it, but I did not write it. Go ahead and switch to the next slide. If you click on the link, this survey is outdated because it was revised, and what you have in front of you printed, I think, is the most recent version. And so I didn't know from there. I turned it back to Ms. Bolton about board's feedback and next steps.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the presentation, and yeah, the timeline for the budget is fast approaching, and I know everybody's made a commitment that we will pass a budget by June 30th, as we are required. The poll, if you will, or survey that is before you has been modified from the original one. And the original, and largely because, the original, fortunately, the treasurer added some language that cleared up some of the things that I had written, and I appreciated that. And then in order to actually distribute or get it ready for you all to look at and react to, we've got rid of at least one of the category types or whatever so that we would only have 5 options in each. So that was one of the big changes. You may notice that all of these possibilities actually are a growth from the initiatives chart that we talked about that started all the way back in October 23. And we talked about it February 1st at our meeting. And this is the continuation of what we might call board initiatives over the last couple of budgets, and also superintendent initiatives. So right now, just as a maiden voyage, so to speak, tonight, as part of the end of this treasurer's presentation on the budget to the district-wide LSDMC, the people that are attending that meeting tonight will have an opportunity to look at this, react to it, and do some polling. And we'd like to get your input as to things to add, things to take away. And also on Monday night, we can talk together more about what kind of engagement beyond this polling we might want to do with our families and our students and our staff. So this is, right now, everybody would be ranking at the LSDMC. They will rank within each category, 1 to 5, and then they will rank the 5 categories as to which is most important and least important. But these are all things that we have continued and carried through since all the way back to October 23 and up through the new administration as well.
Thank you. Board Member Lundy.
Thank you so much. I would like to just suggest an alternative approach,
Sure.
which was that we ask the administration for their recommendation on all of these. And then
Okay.
we respond to what they recommend is the best way to lead us towards the goals that we've set based on their visibility into the system and what the needs are. To me, this feels like us getting very granular in a way that's outside the scope of where the board's energies are best directed. And so my alternative is I'm happy to share feedback or reactions, but I'm very interested in what the administration thinks first.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you respond?
Sure.
I think that makes perfect sense. I do want to emphasize, though, that whatever is listed here is not strictly board-driven. These were taken from 2 different superintendents over the last few years. So I think there's some interest of the board in particular areas here, but this is administrative-driven. It'd be great to see how they might rank it, because we can't have so many things that we have to focus on necessarily, but these were all things coming from 2 different administrations. But I think it'd be great to get their recommendations and how they're approaching. I think that's good.
Yeah, I wanted, thank you again for the presentations today were great, and for the comments. I wanted to maybe emphasize, I really liked what Board Member Lindy suggested, but I wonder if the administration can do that when they come back. I think it would be interesting to see how those recommendations, sort of are justified in terms of how they might impact student outcomes, or how they might impact cost efficiency, some rationale behind, why they would be prioritized or ranked or whatever. Some justification, I think, would be really important. Thank you.
Thank you. Treasurer Wagner?
Just a point of clarity, I'm sorry. Are we asking for the administrator's feedback on just the survey, or are you asking for the administration to produce a budget for you to react to?
Is that to me, Treasurer Wagner?
Well,
To the whole board, what is the direction to the administration?
So I think I'm going to kind of chunk that question. Ben, can you clarify what you're asking? Because that's different for every board member. I don't have the same request, so.
I mean, my answer is the same to both. I think it's the job of the administration to figure out how to get us from where we are to the vision that we've set. in the best way possible with the resources we have. And so whether it's these particular budget decisions or the budget as a whole, my preference would be that there always be a recommendation from the administration about what the right thing to do is, and and to Mr. Crossett's point, what the rationale is, and what are the trade-offs you see, the other options you thought about, and why you prefer one over another. And my rationale for that is just you all are so much closer to all of these details than we are. We come here for a couple hours a week and do the best we can, and you all do this every minute of every day. And you have teams of people who work for you on this. And you have access to so much more data and information than we have. And I think that, we hire a superintendent, we hire a treasurer to have to think through these really, really hard decisions and then make recommendations to the board. So my answer would really be the same on both of those. I think the more conflicting signals we send you, the harder we make your jobs and the harder we make it is to actually move the district forward.
Thank you. I want to give my opinion regarding, my feedback regarding the engagement survey. I'm not certain that we're at the stage that Board Member Lindy is requesting, which I agree with. I think the administration should drive that. But I don't see under the categories things like preschool promise, which is important to me. So I'm wondering, how did we get to these categories? I think they're super important, but I think that they have been honed down to 5, and I'm not certain that these 5 should be the final priority. I remember in the original poll, the question asked, what do you think are your priorities? I specifically put early childhood education and preschool. So I don't see that here. So I think that before we get to where Board Member Lindy has shared that he feels like where we are is to, the administration's responsibility is to enact the vision set by the board. I don't know if we've set the priorities collectively first. And then I think it is exactly appropriate for the administration team to say, hey, this is the budget for the things that you all have shared are important. So I don't know what happened to the feedback from the board members that listed their priorities. Is that how we got to the 5?
So that, two separate,
Okay.
that was feedback for us. This came from the Vice President Bolton. But there is preschool expansion in here on the second page under property tax requests. So
Okay,
School is there.
okay,
And
I got you. So what is the ask of the board? You want us to just take this paper survey, not the online one, or is it online?
I'm sorry, I don't want to speak for Ms. Bolton, but I
I'm
think
not
this
sure.
was for the community's engagement.
This is for the LSDMC tonight to fly this and see how it works. And whether or not it would ever be expanded would have to be administration and board deciding it. What we were trying to do with this is do what we said on February 1st, which is revisit all the previous and new superintendent administrative initiatives. And again, this is all taken from those charts that we shared before, that we've all seen. And we did eliminate the references regarding negotiations, because last year, I think when we did some polling on negotiations, I think we got in a little bit of trouble with the unions because they felt it was kind of broaching negotiations itself. So those things that were on that chart that dealt with negotiations were not included. And we didn't include the growth plan because we've all kind of been there already. And obviously, that's not going to be stopping at this point in time. So besides that, all of these other ones have been a part of the district's initiatives, and that's what we were trying to capture on this. And I think what we're looking for is reactions to it. We can burn it up. We can see what happens tonight as a matter of discussion among the district-wide LSDMC folks. But these are things on which we have had the administration present to us over the last couple of years, as well as things that we have periodically endorsed as well. So these are things that have come before the board before. over the last couple of years. So we're looking for any ideas people have, and this is good.
So I just, again, I would like to clarify before we end our meeting, this budget engagement survey is being sent to the LSDMC, current LSDMC members tonight.
Who are attending
And-
tonight to see what it looks like.
And
It has
this,
no future if we don't want it to have a future.
and this is being collected by whom?
The administration. At the end of the treasurer's annual budget presentation to the district-wide LSDMC.
And we will have the results of this when?
It's set up as a Google survey, so I imagine tomorrow we could probably share those results.
Okay. Any other board members have? Board Member Crossett?
Yeah, I kind of want to reiterate what Board Member Lindy was saying about, we probably have to do both and, look at the whole budget and then also the survey. I think it's great that we're going to reach out to the LSDMC folks to get their input, and probably we'll have to take their input. My view would be we would have to take their input and respond to what they provide in terms of what we come up with the budget. I think that if we're going to ask for a survey, we definitely need to respond to their input and thank them for their input and see how we could best use it, and so that they get some feedback as well. It's just not a black hole of them offering us information. So we'd probably have to do a little bit of both, I think, what Mr. Lindy was saying. So, thank you.
Thank you. So we have concluded our agenda, and I was trying to verify with our general counsel of how we're going to proceed further, and I'll finish that thought right after Board Member Lindy shares his.
Just before we close, this is, I guess, technically the Student Achievement Committee of the Whole. And I was confused when I saw the agenda and didn't see any student achievement topics on it. I recognize I've missed a couple meetings recently, and I may have missed an update on that. So I just wanted to ask what the story was with the focus of the agenda.
Yes, so we are conducting the treasurer search. Unfortunately, in planning the agenda, our committee of the whole meeting was taken for part of the treasurer search, so that begins at 5 p.m. I didn't have much planning in that, so we've cut our meeting short, much of the things that were going to be discussed, in an effort to accommodate Ohio School Board Association, who is planning that in addition with Board Member Craig. And so we've tried to move those academic topics to the February 10th meeting, we had some there, and then the February 24th meeting, we will have some academics there. But the reason why a lot of the academics has been taken is because from our Saturday work session, which we really needed to get some business done, we conducted much of the treasurer search there. And then the CAL was already agreed upon when we hired Ohio School Board Association. This particular month was already taken for the February 1st work session and the CAL to conduct treasurer search activities. And so, again, I apologize to board members. I did not have much control over that. That was an agenda that was given to me. And so we are going to go into a fact finding to accommodate some of that time and then recess into executive session for the board session of the agenda for the treasurer search.
And that's really very helpful. I think what I'm taking away is unusual circumstances, not part of the plan for the future for how we use this time. And we should anticipate in future Student Achievement Committee of the Whole meetings, a heavy focus on student achievement.
That is exactly correct. Apparently, the board we agreed on this back last year, that February's CAL would include this. And so that is something that we all agreed on, but this is unusual times. And so hopefully, we will get back to the business of academics. And we all, just as a reminder, did agree to extend our SACALs, our Student Achievement Committee of the Wholes, by 30 minutes to include more topics around academics so we can get a full scope. So normally it will be from 4 to 6. And that was to eliminate Health and Safety Committee. So does everyone remember? Are we all in agreement? Does anyone have any other questions? So the board is going to adjourn now for a fact finding, and then we will recess into executive session. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Thank you. Have a good night. Oh, I'm sorry.